I'll start with something that might sound wrong to say out loud, especially to people our age. When I woke up in that hospital bed and realised I was still alive, I was disappointed.
Not because I hate my life, not because I wanted to die, but because for a few minutes that felt like forever, I had been somewhere so beautiful, so peaceful, so full of love, that coming back here felt like being sent from a warm, quiet living room out into a cold parking lot in the rain. Try explaining that to your family. Nurses are fussing over you, machines are beeping, the TV is on some daytime show, and all you can think is, why am I back here? Why couldn't I stay there? I told people that. I told the doctors, I told my friends, I told my family.
They looked at me like I was ungrateful to be alive. But I wasn't ungrateful, I was just heartbroken.
I didn't just almost die once, I died 3 times. Heart stopped, no pulse, flatline.
And in those 3 times, I saw and felt things that completely broke the version of God and heaven I was raised on in a little hellfire church in Louisiana. I grew up in Slidell, Louisiana, just off I-10, not far from the Lake Pontchartrain Causeway. We weren't rich, but we weren't starving. We were that working class American story a lot of you know by heart. Long days, fried chicken on Sundays, and the same old church on the same corner every week. My dad owned an 18-wheeler, old Peterbilt, diesel smell soaked into the seats, coffee stains on the console, country radio crackling on AM stations late at night. He hauled gravel most of the time, hot, dusty work. We didn't just watch him work. By 8 or 9 years old, me and my brother were out in the driveway with him, changing tires that weighed more than we did. While other kids were riding their bikes around the subdivision or playing Nintendo, we were out there with impact wrenches and jacks, hands covered in grease. By 13, Dad had me behind the wheel, creeping that big rig around the yard. By 15, I was taking it down country roads, pulling 80,000 pounds like it was nothing. No partying. No Friday night football stands, no more. We were working. When I did get old enough to think about leaving, I couldn't get a commercial driver's license yet. You had to be 21. So like a lot of young guys who feel half grown and half stuck, I raised my right hand and joined the army. They sent me to Fort Benning, Georgia, airborne school. Up at dawn, boots laced tight, MREs for lunch, guys from all over the country talking trash in 50 different accents. I did my jumps, did my time, then spent a few years stationed in Germany, then Korea, 6 years total, honourably discharged. When I got out, I did what a lot of us do. I went right back to work. Dad had connections, and I ended up running heavy equipment, bulldozers, excavators, big yellow caterpillar machines you can see from a mile away on a job site, pushing mountains of dirt like they were nothing. I loved the power of it. You sit up there 12 feet in the air, engine rumbling under you, pushing out pads for new roads, new wind farms, new neighbourhoods. You feel useful, solid, like you're literally reshaping the earth. But it costs you. We'd work 3 weeks straight sometimes, 21 days in a row, 12 hours a day. No real weekends. No real off switch. You end the day covered in dust, grab a shower in some motel off Highway 54, eat microwave dinners from Walmart, and crash in a bed that's not yours. You know how that life goes. On Sundays, when I was home, I'd still see that world I was raised in. Small Pentecostal church, same wooden pews, same pastor warning us about hell. We're all just one heartbeat away from eternity, he'd say, pounding the pulpit. And I believed him. I really did. I just had no idea how literal that was about to become. For a guy who grew up hearing about the fires of hell every Sunday, the first time my heart really gave out, nobody thought it was serious at all. Not even the people in the white coats. The first time my chest really betrayed me, I was in North Dakota working another job. You know the kind of place. Endless flatland. Wind cutting through your jacket no matter how many layers you wear. I was on the phone with my girlfriend, just talking about regular stuff. Bills, weather, what we'd do when I finally got some time off. And out of nowhere it felt like a horse kicked me square in the chest. Not a little pinch, not a dull ache. I mean a full-on something's terribly wrong blast. My hand went straight to my sternum, my breath got thin. I checked the pulse in my neck and it was jumping all over the place like a speedometer on a bad road.
Now, I'm not the kind of man who complains about every little ache. Years of carrying tools, climbing in and out of machines, loading steel and pipe. You learn to ignore a lot. So when I told my girlfriend, hey, my chest is really hurting, she went from chatty to serious in 1 second.
Hang up and call 911, she said. Then she hung up on me. I ended up in a hospital, cold gown, fluorescent lights, nurses typing on computers. They ran some tests, watched some monitors, poked and prodded. Then they told me it was heartburn. Take some meds, they said. Watch what you eat. That was it. I went back to work. You push it to the back of your mind. You tell yourself the professionals know better. You keep moving dirt and chasing paychecks. About a year later, I was in Pratt, Kansas, working on a wind farm. You've probably seen those big white wind turbines on the news. 3 huge blades slowly turning against a flat blue sky. That was us. We were cutting in access roads, building pads, moving earth all across those Kansas fields. That Saturday morning, I climbed up into my bulldozer like always. Big steel tracks, diesel fumes, dust hanging in the air. It was supposed to be an easy day. We were even promised we'd get off early. You know how rare that is. Around noon, I shut the machine down, ate a quick sandwich in the cab, cheap bread, peanut butter and jelly from a Walmart jar, washed down with lukewarm water from a plastic jug rolling around on the floorboard. Then I fired the dozer back up and started pushing again. Maybe 10 minutes later it started.
At first, it was just a pressure in my neck, not quite pain, more like someone had thumbed their hand into the side of my throat and was slowly pressing down. I thought, that's weird, but it'll pass.
I kept working. It didn't pass. The pressure moved, neck, then across my chest, heavy, like a truck had parked on top of me. I shut the dozer down, climbed carefully down the ladder, boots slipping a little on metal tracks covered in dust. By the time my feet hit the ground, the pain wasn't just pressure anymore. It was sharp, deep. And I made one good decision. I didn't try to tough it out. I walked to the water truck and told the driver, "Get me to the medic, now." He didn't argue. We bumped across the work site, dust flying, orange cones and other machines blurring by. He dropped me at the little field office where the safety folks and medic stayed. I stepped inside, still trying to be half tough, half calm. "Hey," I said, "I need some Tums." Why Tums? Because I remembered that day in North Dakota. Same kind of chest pain, same weird feeling, and they'd told me it was heartburn. So in my head I'm thinking, this has happened before. Just give me the antacids and let me get back to that dozer. The medic, a woman about my age, serious eyes, no nonsense, looked at me, then at my chest. She gave me aspirin and Tums just like I asked, but she also made me sit down. She didn't let me walk it off. And that probably saved my life. As I sat there in that cheap office chair, my left arm started to ache. Not like sleeping on it funny. This was deep, heavy, like the bones themselves were tired. That's when I knew things had gone past heartburn. I told myself, okay, this is bad, this is really bad. And then something strange began to happen. In the middle of all that pain and fear, a kind of sleepiness slid over me. Not the normal kind from a long day, more like a curtain being drawn. I could see the safety guy across from me at a folding table, just like you'd see in any trailer on any job site in America. Clipboards, hard hats, a half-empty styrofoam cup of coffee. He was right there, maybe 6 feet away. As I started to slump out of the chair, my last clear thought was almost silly. Man, I hope he catches me before my face hits that floor. And then, nothing. No office, no chair, no medic, no safety guy, no dust, no Kansas.
Just stars. I thought I'd fallen asleep, but my heart had already stopped.
When everything went dark in that office, the next moment I was aware of, I wasn't lying on the floor. I was surrounded by stars. At first I thought it was one of those strange dreams you get after a long day. You know, the kind where nothing makes sense, but it all feels weirdly normal. I figured, okay, you passed out, you're dreaming. You'll wake up in a minute with people yelling your name. But it didn't feel like a dream. It felt more real than this table, this chair, this screen you're watching. There was a huge cavern-like space, like a cave the size of a stadium. The walls came down all around me, but where a floor should have been, there was nothing.
Just more sky. Imagine standing where the floor should be and looking down into a night sky instead of up at it. That's what it was like. I didn't realize at first that I wasn't standing on anything. I was just there, floating.
In front of me, where a floor ought to be, there was a path, square stones side by side, like big concrete pavers you'd buy at Home Depot, only older, like they belonged in some ancient European castle. The path ran forward, then off to the right and out of sight. I turned my attention to the left. The path went that way too and ended in a stone wall about 100 feet away. In that wall was a tall doorway, arched at the top, like something out of an old cathedral you'd see in a travel show. Now, growing up in church, the word cave would have made most people think hell, fire, demons, all that. Here's the thing, I wasn't scared, not even a little. I felt a curiosity I hadn't felt since I was a kid, like the first time you walk into a big stadium, or the first time you see the Grand Canyon in person. As I stared at that doorway, I realized there was someone standing in it. The figure was faint, kind of see-through, like a person made of fog with light behind it. It didn't move much, just watched me. And here's where you'd expect fear to kick in, right? Some ghost movie reaction, but that never came. Instead, I thought, almost like a kid in a store, I want to go see who that is. The second I formed that thought, I shot forward along that stone path like a bullet. No running, no steps, just whoosh. The walls on each side blurred like you'd see out a car window at 80 miles an hour. In a heartbeat, I was at the wall, hovering near the doorway. And that's when it hit me. Humans don't move like that. How did I just do that? I looked down, and there was that figure gliding along the path below me, not walking, just floating. It didn't look up. It just continued forward until it disappeared around the corner. Somehow, without feeling my body move, I passed through that arched doorway.
Everything went completely black. Not the kind of dark where your eyes adjust, but the kind where you can't see your own hand in front of your face.
Then, way off in the distance, a light appeared. It moved like someone walking through a dark house with a flashlight, searching for something. The beam swept across the blackness, then landed on me.
It was so bright that by instinct I tried to shield my eyes. I don't know if I had hands, but the reflex was still there. That automatic motion of raising your arm against the glare of headlights.
Then the light took me in. It was like stepping into warm water after standing out in the cold. The brightness softened, and I realized I wasn't on the outside of it anymore. I was inside the light. I looked around, left, right, up, down. It was all the same soft radiance, no walls, no ceiling, just light. After a while, the light in front of me began to thicken, like fog rolling across a field in early morning. In that fog, shapes began to appear: blue sky, depth, space.
And then something happened that I still can't describe without running out of words.
It felt like someone grabbed me, not physically, more like my entire being had been picked up and plugged into a current.
Love.
Now, I know we toss that word around a lot down here. We say we love our kids, love our grandkids, love our dogs, love our favourite show on Netflix. But what hit me then was so far beyond any earthly love that using the same word almost feels like lying. It was total, absolute, unconditional acceptance and warmth and power all at once, like being hugged from the inside out by something older than time and bigger than the universe.
If electricity could feel like kindness, that's what it was.
While I stood in that love, words began to appear in front of me.
Forgiveness, love, peace.
Not printed on paper, not spoken out loud, just there, clear as a road sign, and every time a word appeared, the feeling grew stronger. When peace showed up, I felt something in me relax that had never relaxed my entire life. No worry about bills, no anxiety about work, no guilt from old mistakes, no fear of judgment. I floated out of that space, still bathed in that light, and drifted downward. Below me I saw pine trees, tall and familiar, like the ones you'd see off the side of a two-lane road in East Texas or northern Louisiana. I could see every needle, every tiny detail. It was like my vision had been upgraded past 4K. As I sank past the tops of the trees, my perspective shifted, and I saw a drop-off, like those California cliffs down to the Pacific you see on postcards.
Down below that cliff was a garden. Not like someone's little backyard garden with tomatoes and a bird feeder. This was huge. The flowers were the size of dinner tables. Big, vibrant, colours more intense than anything at Home Depot's garden centre. Reds, blues, yellows, all so saturated they almost hummed.
And here's the strange part. I felt like the flowers were aware of me. They didn't have faces, no eyes, no mouths, but there was a sense of attention, like when you walk into a room and everyone turns and looks your way. As I floated slowly along the edge of that cliff, I found that I could zoom in on any flower I wanted just by focusing on it. One moment I'd be taking in the whole garden. The next, it was like my eyes were inches away from one petal, seeing patterns and textures so delicate they felt alive. There was no boredom, no rush, just this steady wave of love and beauty coming off everything. Then, like someone changing the channel on a TV, the scene shifted again. Suddenly I was back in open sky. No trees, no ground, just endless blue. At first it was calm. Then I noticed four brilliant columns of light in front of me, lined up vertically, spaced apart. They grew larger as they approached, and as I watched them, smaller lights began popping up all around me. Dozens, then hundreds. Tiny bright points zipping and curling in the air like fireflies over a summer field. I knew, without anybody explaining, but that those small lights were people, souls, family, loved ones who had already crossed over. The small lights began flying toward the top of the brightest column, merging into it one by one. The column started to take shape: head, shoulders, arms. Not a man made of flesh, but a form made entirely of light, full of more power than words can hold. When the shape was complete, this glowing figure began to move through the sky, up, down, across, never taking its gaze off me. Wherever it drifted, its face stayed turned in my direction, like I was the only thing it wanted to look at. And for the first time in my life, staring at something that clearly wasn't human, clearly wasn't of this world, I felt no fear, only awe. Then, just as suddenly as he'd appeared, the figure took off. Fast. So fast he left streaks of light behind him, like when a jet leaves a trail across the sky. I watched until every last streak faded, and then I opened my eyes. I was back on the floor in that field office in Kansas. The medic was on top of me, pressing hard on my chest. Her eyes looked wild, scared, relieved all at once.
Hey, I croaked out like someone waking from a nap.
She jerked back, hands flying off my chest. You were gone, she said. Your heart stopped. How long? I asked. 4, maybe 5 minutes. Think about that. In 4 to 5 minutes of Earth time, I'd seen the stars, the cave, the path, the light, the love, the garden, the sky, the lights, the figure. Up here, on the clock on the wall, it was just a few minutes. Where I'd been, it felt like an hour, maybe more. That was just the first time. They loaded me into an ambulance because the nearest major hospital was about 80 miles away, up the road toward Wichita. As they hooked me up to monitors and IV lines, the adrenaline faded and a deep exhaustion rolled in. I told a joke to the guys standing against the wall, something about how I'd be paying for a helicopter ride for the rest of my life if they called one. They chuckled. They were scared for me. I wasn't scared for me, because I'd just seen that somewhere between that job site and the hospital I slipped out again. This time it was different. When I popped out of my body, I found myself standing right next to me. I saw a man stretched out on the gurney, head tilted to the side, mouth slightly open, eyes closed. Wires on his chest, EMTs working around him. The floor of the ambulance was below us, the siren wailing faintly in the distance. I didn't recognize myself. There was no attachment to that body at all. No, oh no, that's me. I looked at that man like he was an it, a vehicle someone had left parked on the side of the road. I turned away.
What I saw next was a circle of flowers, not like the giant garden from before, but a ring, like a wreath, made of different kinds of blooms grouped together. Roses, lilies, sunflowers, little wildflowers. Each kind had its own patch, its own space, different colors, shapes, sizes.
Somehow, without a sermon and without anybody lecturing me, I understood what I was looking at. This was us. Humanity. Blacks, whites, Latinos, Asians, Native Americans. People from big cities, small towns, rich neighborhoods, trailer parks. Different groups, different shapes, different colors. But all of them inside one circle. No one outside, no one left out. And it hit me how much time we spend fighting over our little patch of flowers, convinced we're better than the ones next to us, while from above, it's all one reef. I came back from that second NDE with a completely different way of looking at people. I didn't see types anymore. I saw souls. They flew me by helicopter to a hospital in Wichita. The doctors rushed me through bright corridors, just like you see on medical shows. They stripped my clothes, prepped me for surgery, threaded wires and instruments into my chest to open blocked arteries. When it was over, one of the doctors looked at me, shook his head and said, "You're supposed to be on a ventilator. You just had what we call a widowmaker. You had maybe a 10% chance even in a hospital. You shouldn't be sitting up and talking to me right now." Later, another cardiologist told me something that shook me almost as much as the visions. He said, "We've been tracking this kind of heart attack since the 1970s. As far as our records show, your heart and one other person's have healed completely after it. All that's left is some scarring from the shocks. Your heart's beating like mine."
Brian, he said, you are a miracle.
On paper, I was supposed to be dead. In real life, I was alive. In my head and heart, I was somewhere in between.
You'd think surviving all that would make a person nothing but grateful. And I was grateful. But I was also something nobody expected.
Depressed. I walked out of that hospital in Kansas with a vest on, a medical device that would shock my heart if it misfired again. I went back to everyday sounds. Traffic on US 54, commercials on TV, the hum of the refrigerator, the news talking about gas prices and elections. And I missed that other place.
Missed it so much it hurt.
How do you tell people, "I didn't want to come back"? How do you explain that to folks who just spent days praying for you, bringing casseroles, sending texts, crying in waiting rooms? They say, "God spared you." You think, "God showed me home and sent me back to the parking lot."
For a while I tried to shove it down. Pretend it was just a weird event, but it kept tugging at me. The love, the light, the clarity, the lack of fear. The way I saw people as souls instead of problems.
So I started looking for others like me.
That's when I discovered other people's near-death stories, books, videos, little support groups, testimonies online. Men and women who'd coded on an operating table in Ohio, in a car wreck in Arizona, during childbirth in Florida.
And you know what shocked me?
They kept using the same phrases I'd been using. The love is indescribable. The colors were more real than here. Time didn't work the same way. Everything was about love.
These were people who'd never met me, weren't from my church, weren't from my state, and yet they were describing the same kind of place, the same kind of feeling. That's when I realized I wasn't crazy, I wasn't making it up, I wasn't alone. I grew up in a church where we heard more about hell than heaven. If you didn't have the right kind of experience, if you didn't behave just right, if you didn't follow the rules line by line, you were told you'd burn forever. I died 3 times.
Not once did I see hell.
Not flames, not demons, not a list of my sins on a big screen with God scowling at me. What I felt was a love so complete it washed over all the things I'd worried about, all the ways I thought I hadn't measured up. Now, does that mean there is no consequence, no justice, no right and wrong? I don't believe that. I still think what we do here matters. We can cause real harm. We can be selfish, cruel, greedy. We can choose to live like we're the only flower in the circle that matters. But whatever I saw and felt on the other side didn't look like a furious judge waiting to throw people away. It looked like a father who wanted his kids to stop tearing each other apart.
Since then, I live different.
I still pay bills, still stand in line at Walmart, still get frustrated in traffic on I-10, still worry sometimes about retirement and health and how long this old truck is going to last. But I don't fear death. I don't look at you and see Republican or Democrat, Baptist or Catholic, black or white, legal or illegal. I look at you and see a soul, somebody's child, somebody's grandparent, somebody who's carrying burdens I can't see.
Material stuff doesn't mean what it used to. The big house, the brand new F-150, the latest iPhone, the perfect social media life. None of that came with me when my heart stopped. None of it mattered when I was looking at those flowers and that sky.
What mattered, and still matters, is how we treat each other.
Do we help when we can? Do we forgive when we could stay bitter? Do we care more about being right than being kind?
You don't have to believe my story. You don't have to agree with my theology. You might say, well, maybe it was all in your brain, Brian. That's fine. We're allowed to wrestle with this stuff. But I'll tell you this. Since that day in Kansas, my job, as far as I understand it, is simple. Tell this story. Remind people that we're more than our bodies, more than our politics, more than our bank accounts.
And ask a question, one I'm asking you right now, wherever you're watching from. Your recliner, your kitchen table, maybe a hospital bed like I once was.
If we really are souls in a circle, all connected, all seen, all loved more than we can imagine. What kind of person do you want to be for as long as your heart is still beating here?